You walk in, pay one flat price, and then you are handed a plate and told to eat as much as you physically can. Steak, crab legs, dessert, seconds, thirds, ninths, all for the same price, whether you eat one plate or 9. There are people who train for this, who skip breakfast and show up starving on purpose, treating it like a sport they intend to win. And the restaurant lets them. It smiles. It refills the tray. It wishes them a good afternoon. On paper, this is the easiest business on earth to bankrupt, because all a customer has to do to beat it is eat more than they paid for. And yet, the all-you-can-eat buffet has quietly turned that impossible-sounding promise into one of the most precisely engineered money machines in all of food. Every plate, every glass, the exact order you pass the food in, and the size of the plate they hand you at the door has been arranged so that your own appetite ends up working for them instead of against. And the twist waiting at the end of this is a good one, because the very design that made buffets almost impossible to beat is the same thing quietly wiping them off the map. Start with the fact that feels like it should sink the whole model before it floats. Yes, the big eaters are real. Walk into any buffet, and somewhere in that room is a man on his 5th loaded plate, and the restaurant is genuinely, cheerfully losing money on him. But he is not the customer the buffet is built around. A buffet does not set its price against its hungriest guest. It sets its price against its average guest. And the average guest is far, far less heroic than he likes to imagine at the door. Be honest with me for a second here. When you walk into a buffet, are you going in with a game plan, quietly trying to out-eat the price and get every penny back? Or do you fold after 2 plates and a small bowl of ice cream like most mortals do? Tell me in the comments which one you actually are, because I find the strategists fascinating. And if this is the kind of thing you enjoy having pulled apart, tapping like and hitting subscribe is genuinely the one thing that keeps these going. Right, back to the average eater, because he is the whole business. For every person who eats until it physically hurts, there are roughly 19 more who graze one plate, pick out a second, and leave real money on the table. Only about 1 in 20 diners is a true heavy hitter. So the buffet is not really running a restaurant. It is running a numbers game. And the number it cares about is the average cost per head across the whole room. Think of it less like a kitchen and more like an insurance company. An insurer knows a few customers will file enormous claims. Most will file nothing. And as long as the price is set against the behavior of the entire pool, the giant claims are quietly covered by everyone else. The buffet works the exact same way. Your 5th plate hero is a large claim. The couple who came for the salad bar and 1 slice of cake are the premiums that pay for him. Get enough people through the doors and the wild eaters vanish into the average. And the average is where the profit lives. It is worth pausing on how big this simple trick got. At its peak, the American buffet was everywhere, from roadside chains to the grandest of casinos. And the biggest of them all, Golden Corral, grew into hundreds of locations, serving millions of people a week on exactly this math. The model spread because it solved the real problem on both sides of the counter. For the customer, a predictable price and 0 menu anxiety. You eat what you want and never do arithmetic. For the operator, cheap ingredients and gutted labor at enormous scale. 200 covers on a Sunday, 1 flat price each. Put out by a kitchen barely bigger than a fast food line. Done right, it is one of the most efficient ways to feed a crowd anyone has ever found. Now, watch how they protect that average, because almost none of it is left to chance. The first and biggest lever is one most people never even register as part of the meal. Self-service. No waiter takes your order, walks it to the kitchen, carries your plate out, checks back in on you, or brings you a dessert. You do every single piece of that yourself, and you do it for free. In an ordinary restaurant, labor is the single heaviest cost after the food itself, often 1/5 to 1/3 of everything coming in. The buffet takes that entire job, hands it to the customer, and pays them nothing for it. What is left in the kitchen is a skeleton crew cooking a fixed, unchanging menu in enormous batches, which is about the cheapest way to produce food that has ever been invented. And the food that skeleton crew is making has been chosen as carefully as anything on the menu. Buffets buy in bulk, buy the pallet and the case, at prices a normal restaurant never sees. And they built the spread around ingredients that are cheap, filling, and forgiving. Rice, pasta, potatoes, bread, beans, soup, fried everything. These are foods where the cost of feeding one more person rounds down to almost nothing. Keep the food costs somewhere around a third of the ticket. Keep labor gutted by self-service. And a business that looks reckless from the outside starts turning a real, if thin, profit. And thin is the honest word here, because a healthy buffet is often living on a margin of just a few percent, which is exactly why the next part matters so much. Because on margins that slim, they cannot simply hope you go easy. They have to arrange it. So they arrange the walk-in. It begins the instant you pick up a plate, because that plate is smaller than the one you would use at home, usually around 9 or 10 inches instead of a 12-inch dinner plate. It feels normal in the hand, but a smaller plate that looks perfectly full is carrying a good deal less food, and it quietly forces you to stop, walk back, and queue again if you want more. Every one of those trips is a moment where your stomach gets a chance to catch up with your eyes and tell you it is done. Then there is the order of the line itself, and the order is never an accident. The very first things you reach are almost never the crab legs or the carved roast. They are the bread, the rolls, the rice, the pasta, the potatoes, the big glistening trays of salad. In other words, the cheapest, heaviest, most starch and water heavy food in the entire building, positioned at the precise moment your plate is emptiest and your appetite is the loudest. By the time you round the corner to the expensive protein, half your plate is already gone, and so is a chunk of your hunger. The costliest items live at the end of the journey on purpose, and often they are not even yours to pile freely. The prime rib is behind a counter, carved into a controlled slice by a member of staff. The shrimp sits in a small tray, served with comically small tongue, refilled slowly and in modest amount, so it is forever almost running out. You are free to take as much as you like, in theory. The layout just quietly makes sure that in practice you take less. The drinks hide another slice of the profit. Look at the glasses. They are enormous, and the two things that go in them are the two cheapest liquids a restaurant can serve. Water, which is effectively free, and soft drinks, which cost the kitchen a few cents a glass and carry one of the fattest margins in the entire food world. In plenty of buffets, the drink is sold separately or bundled into the price precisely because it earns so well. But the drink is doing a second job beyond its margin, and it is a sneaky one. A large glass of soda or water fills a real amount of stomach space, and the carbonation bloats you on top of that. A belly full of fizz is a belly with no room left for the sirloin. You are, in the most literal sense, filling yourself up on the house's cheapest product before you ever reached its most expensive one. And underneath all of it sits the simplest truth of the whole business, which is that you are a far weaker eater than you believe walking in. Your appetite is loudest before the first bite and fades fast. The first plate is always the biggest and the most exciting. By the second, the thrill has cooled. By the third, the same food that dazzled you 10 minutes ago is just sort of sitting there, and you're eating out of stubbornness rather than hunger. Economists have a dry name for this: diminishing returns. And the buffet is basically a live demonstration of it. The sunk cost itch, that nagging voice insisting you paid for this, so you had better get your money's worth, will push you to keep going. But your stomach gets the deciding vote. And your stomach votes early, and it votes to stop. And here is the quiet genius sitting on top of it all. Even after the small plate, the wall of bread, and the bloating soda, most people walk out feeling like they won. You stood in front of an endless spread. You ate more than you would ever have ordered off a menu, and the price never once moved. That feeling, the sense of abundance, of having beaten the system, is the real thing a buffet is selling. And it is far cheaper to hand out than the food is, because the value was never in the 9th plate you were never going to reach. It was in believing you could. A restaurant that charges per dish has to make you feel every price on the way down. A buffet sells you the fantasy of limitlessness once. At the door, collects the money up front, and then leans on a stomach the size of a fist to keep that fantasy cheap. You pay for infinity and carry home about 3 plates. So that is the machine, and it is a beautiful one. Cheap, staple food bought by the pallet, a workforce of unpaid customers, a floor plan that steers you towards starch and away from steak, and the dead reliable fact that human appetite fades faster than human pride, which leaves one enormous question hanging in the air. If the buffet is this cleverly built, this well defended, this good at winning, why on earth are they disappearing? Because they are. The format has been thinning out for years. Some of the biggest names in the business have collapsed outright, and the single most famous buffet city on the planet is quietly ripping them out of its casinos. To understand why, you have to see the 3 things holding the whole model up and watch what happens when one is pulled away. The first prop was never really about food at all. For decades, the most jaw-dropping buffets in the world, the ones with the ice sculptures and the endless crab, were never designed to make a single cent on their own. They were bait. In Las Vegas, the buffet was a classic loss leader, a mountain of prime rib sold below what it cost to make, put there for one reason: to pull you in off of the strip and through the doors. Because once you were inside, the gambling floor would more than settle the bill. And for a long time, the math on that was overwhelming. Through the 1970s and 80s, roughly 75% of a strip casino's money game came straight from gambling, with everything else, rooms, food, shows, making up the last quarter. Feeding people at a loss was nothing next to what the tables brought back. But over the following decades, that balance quietly flipped on its head. By the early 2000s, around 75% of Las Vegas revenue was coming from hotels, dining, shopping, and entertainment, and only about 25% from gambling. The buffet was a relic of the old arrangement, still being subsidized by a gambling win that was no longer showing up. Once the tables stopped quietly paying the buffet bills, its real cost was left standing there, exposed for everyone to see, which is why MGM is closing its remaining Las Vegas buffets, and one casino operator summed the whole era up in a single flat line: that buffets generate traffic, but they were loss leaders. That bait had outlived the trap. The second prop got knocked out in a matter of weeks, and it revealed a fragility built into the buffet's very DNA. A buffet is by definition a large crowd of strangers reaching into the same open trays, gripping the same serving spoons, breathing over the same uncovered food for hours. That closeness is exactly what makes it cheap. It is also exactly what made it, in 2020, the single most dangerous restaurant format on earth. When a virus turned shared spoons and open trays into a public health problem, the buffet did not get more expensive. It became flat out impossible to run. Soup Plantation, a much-loved chain, also known as Sweet Tomatoes, was bleeding around $1 million a week across its 97 locations. It could not reopen safely, and in May 2020, it closed every last one for good. 4,400 people out of work. And the cruel part is that people had not stopped wanting it. The exact feature that had made the buffet cheap for 50 years, self-service from a shared spread, was the one feature you simply could not keep running. The third prop is the slowest and the quietest, and it is squeezing the ones that are left right now. Go back to that margin, just a few percent on a good day. That razor-thin cushion only survives while 2 things stay still: the price of the food and the appetite of the average eater. When wholesale prices climb, when beef and eggs and cooking oil all get more expensive at once, that tiny margin is the very first thing to vanish, because the buffet cannot exactly ask people to eat less. Its entire promise is the opposite. The averages game is an elegant trick, but it only balances while the numbers on both sides of it hold steady. And lately, those numbers refuse to sit still, which carries the whole story back to where it started. A buffet was always underneath the ice sculptures and the endless plates, a bet that on any given day, ordinary human averages, dirt cheap ingredients, and an army of customers doing the serving for free would together cover the handful of people eating like it is their final meal on earth. It is genuinely brilliant, and it is genuinely fragile. And the reason is that those are not 2 separate facts. They are the same fact, looked at from opposite sides. The thing that makes the buffet so hard to beat as a diner, that it is tuned to the crowd and not to you, is the exact same thing that leaves it balanced on a knife edge the moment the crowd, or the cheap food, or the gambler quietly funding it in the background slips away. So the next time you walk in, hand over your one flat price and reach for that first small plate in the front of a line that just happens to be open with bread. You will know what is really going on. The buffet is not betting that you personally will show restraint. It is betting on all of you at once, and almost every single time the house eats well. If you enjoyed pulling the buffet apart like this, a like and a subscribe genuinely helps this channel more than you would think. And if you want to see the same move, chief thing out front, clever business hiding behind it, running in a completely different industry, go and watch our video on how dollar stores make money, or dig into the full money and business playlist on the channel. See you in the next one.
I am